Caputo is clean through. Chicho Caputo! Inevitable. It just seemed a formality, and so it proved.
The Calcio Guys is a weekly podcast by Adreano DiNardo, Gianni Delacoli, and myself, Nicholas Di Giovanni. We want to bring Calcio back to its roots in our communities and share stories from around the world about why we're passionate about the beautiful game. You can listen to us anywhere where you listen to your podcasts, including Spreaker, Google Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, iHeart Radio, and Mixcloud. Give us your opinion on social media at The Calcio Guys on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. The intro song is Fireworks by Jazar. Solo in Italia. That's one thing we could say about the shenanigans that happened in the Serie A this past weekend. Just so much to talk about. I don't even know where to start, but all we got to say is Solo in Italia. And this is Solo on the Calcio Guys with Adriano DiNardo. I'm Nicholas Di Giovanni. Unfortunately, Gianni couldn't make it this week. Man, I was looking forward to talking to him about a lot of things. There's a lot of things we're going to talk about. And we're going to have Tito from Viola Nation on later to talk about Fiorentina. Adri, how's it going?
Not too bad. I mean, came off of a huge Italy win this afternoon, so I couldn't be happier for that. But you said it right. A lot of shenanigans, a lot of mayhem, dumpster fires on Twitter. It was a shit show, to say the least. And I guess Johnny fed me to the wolves because I'm by myself trying to argue on his side against the Juve fan here. But jokes aside, no, it's always good to talk calcio, and can't wait. It's good to be back.
So, I guess we'll start with the big talking point of the week. I mean, Italy did just play a couple of hours ago, so that is fresh on our minds. But in reality, there isn't much to say about it. It's a friendly against Moldova. It's one of those games where you just pad your stats. Chicho Caputo first goal for the national team.
Boy.
Brian Cristante first goal for the national team. Domenico Berardi first goal for the national team. A lot of firsts in this game. You know what? I like the way Cristante played though. He looked good. I know it's Moldova, but I guess you could say he's the first Canadian to score for the Italian national team. Yeah, no, it was,
this game here, taking it with a grain of salt. I get, like Nick said, it was against Moldova. Some people don't even know where Moldova is on the map, as we discussed before coming on air. But jokes aside, again, it was great to see that, they still take these games seriously, even though it is a friendly. I think Mancini has put that into perspective with this group, with this squad. That the rankings do matter. For Italy to go up the rankings, they dropped quite a bit in these past couple of years now. So for them to get back into the groove of things, obviously again like against Moldova, take it as you will, but it was good to see our boy Chicho Caputo get his first start and first goal in his debut. So we're super pumped for that, and just an overall team performance that going into these Nation Leagues games that count for a bit more. They're on a good course, so it's always good to see.
Yeah, Poland on Sunday, Netherlands on Wednesday. On Wednesday, I believe. So those are the important games. At least it's competitive, right? And by the way, 3 Sassuolo players started, and I don't know if it's the first time 2 Sassuolo players start in the national team or 3 Sassuolo players start in the national team. I heard it quickly while I was listening to the game. I don't know if it was 2 or 3. Regardless, Locatelli, Caputo, Berardi starting together, and then ex-Sassuolo players, Acerbi and Sensi also played in the game. So in total, 5 Sassuolo players played. Fantastic for they are pretty much a provincial team. This is a team that they were a provincial team until about 10 years ago when they got new ownership. And then moved to the Mappe Stadium and became a Serie A team. But Adriano, the absolute embarrassing situation, the terrible look on the league, there's just so many words we could use to describe this Juve-Napoli situation. And everybody's you could ask 100 Serie A fans what their opinion on it is, and you're going to get 102 different opinions. It's, as I said at the top of the show, solo in Italia. And I think, the fact that we're Wednesday, and this happened on Saturday and Sunday, I think we've all calmed down a bit. We've all kind of looked at it at a wider perspective. It's in the hands of the league right now. Obviously, Napoli, originally it was Napoli couldn't leave Campania, and then Napoli chose not to leave Campania, and then Napoli was told they were suggested not to leave Campania, to not go to the game. And then at first it was Juventus refusing to play, but then it became the Serie A refusing to cancel the game, and then it became this and that and this and that. It was a back and forth. Now it's going to go to a judge. But meanwhile, it's hard to not laugh talking about it, but the league actually went through with the game with the broadcast. And if you tuned into the broadcast, this is what you heard.
Yeah, the rights and wrongs of tonight, I think, will be definitively settled in the coming weeks. Here's Daniele Doveri, the referee, just checking that the goal line technology is working. If he had a little bit of impishness about him, he'd call the game off because of the bad weather, but I doubt that's going to happen. Anyway, that's all working, but unfortunately, we don't have opposition for Juve.
Juventus players showed up. The referee showed up. The referee was checking the goal line technology. I don't know if you saw that, but he went up with the ball to check the goal line technology, knowing full well Napoli wasn't coming. But it's just awful look on the league.
Yeah, it's an embarrassment. Listen, I don't care. This game just got even more amplified because of the teams participating in this particular match, right? You talk about, the 9-time Scudetto winning Juventus and a challenger for these past couple of years in Napoli that's been a top Serie A team for these past years. So, but what I gotta say is that, whatever side you're on, if you're on, the Juve side or the Napoli side, or you're kind of in between. I don't really have a preference on this side. I'm kind of, I guess, the neutral coming into this, but just to see that, I don't care what teams were playing. It could have been, Crotone Spezia, a team. In my opinion, any team shouldn't have to put themselves along with other players, staff, officials, whoever, at risk if they choose not to play a game. The postponement, in my personal opinion, should have been almost an automatic in terms of what was going on in this situation. Obviously, COVID hit hard in Italy. Obviously, we knew that, and now this whole second wave, thing, whatever. If you want to say there's second wave coming in strong or not strong, whatever. I don't know if, you're going to, like Nick said, at the top of the show, first kind of they were told not to leave Campania. Now, then they decided on their own not to leave. All these reports came in, one after the other. Who do you believe? At the end of the day, Napoli did have some cases. I think it was 2 or 3 cases, within their squad and medical staff or support staff. So I don't know. It's just one of those things that I think the easiest route would have been a postponement. Now you're going to say, oh, okay, why should they postpone it? Because, there was other teams that had cases and games still went on. I just think those factors were different in those certain circumstances. There wasn't the teams were already in place to play, and then the cases came out. These were cases for Napoli that came out before, and they still hadn't traveled yet. So I think that was kind of the gray zone there. And I don't know. I hope now, like Nick said, solo in Italia. We have to wait for the call on this game in the hands of the league. And I don't know if those are secure hands to put this type of thing into. So listen, we hope for the best. This game needs to be played. These are 2 top teams in Serie A. This game needs to be played and leave it all on the field. Don't make it this whole 3-0 a tavolino bullshit. I personally don't like it. It needs to be played on the field and not on the courts, in my opinion.
Yeah, but I was reading today. They might. One possibility is to dock Napoli a point, but still play this game on January the 13th, which is 3 days before Juve Inter. So, yeah, that wouldn't be a good look either. You got two derbies coming up for Juve. But one thing I'll say, Adriano, you think it should have been postponed. I'm not going to disagree or agree with that. I have no say in that. All I will say is you have to look at the league and the protocols and the rules that they put in place this week. And this is something where you could either agree with the rules or disagree with the rules, because the rules, if you look at it, it says if a team has 12 players who are healthy, tested negative, they could play. And then it also says a team can only postpone if they have 10 positive cases. That's a lot. 10 positive cases. When you have a team with 10 positive cases, that's pretty much the whole team. This thing spreads like a wildfire, especially in the dressing room, and that was the biggest problem. Is Napoli did not have the 10 cases; they only had one or two, and I think it only ended up being one or two. Zielinski and
Elmas.
It was Elmas. They were the only ones who ended up testing positive. Obviously the whole situation with Genoa put a different spin on it. I think at the same time, this is why the Serie A needs to do daily testing. Genoa, the reason why there was the outbreak, or possibly one of the reasons why there was the outbreak in Genoa, is because that week the Serie A stopped the daily testing and they said, okay, we're just going to do the testing 2 days before the game. And the whole false negatives thing, obviously that happened within Genoa. And I mentioned it last week on the show. There, in the games there was no rules followed. Masiello and Osimhen kissing pretty much. It's just a bad look on the league. You know what? In my opinion, if you're going to cancel that game, postpone that game, you should have stopped the entire league at that point and said, look, our protocols obviously weren't working for Genoa. Let's stop the league. We got the international break. Let's stop it here. It'll give us 2 weeks to reconfigure, to figure out what we're going to do. And then we'll start again. You can't have one game where a team has one or two positives play and then another game where a team has one or two positives not play. But then again, that's where everybody's opinion is going to be different. In my opinion, it's either stop the entire league or you play on. That's my honest opinion.
But that's the thing, right? There's so much of this like gray zone in this whole predicament. There's so much unknowns. Why? Unknowns. I mean, there's so much uncertainty of like when or not we're not going to follow the rules, right? There's kind of like you just said, why have one matchup play and then another matchup not? I think that's kind of where the rules. What rules? We're talking about the Serie A, and then Agnelli on top of it wants to go talk about following the rules. As an outsider, I don't know. I would have kept my mouth shut on that, but that just maybe a friendly jab to my friend over here, the Juventino. But
one thing I will say is I don't understand the instant reaction. Well, okay, I do understand where it comes from, but it makes no sense. The instant reaction to blame everything on Juventus right away on Twitter. They had nothing to do with this. They were sitting at home saying, you know the John Travolta meme where he just looks around, where is everybody? That's what they were doing. They had nothing to do with this, and suddenly it's Juventus' fault. But I think we've talked enough about this. But we will stick on Juventus. Federico Chiesa, my boy Chiesa. That's an absolute lie. That's your boy now. That's your boy. We will talk about more with Tito from Viola Nation. Oh man, in Italy, I wouldn't call it the colpo del mercato, but it's going to be an interesting one. It's I'm not a fan of it. You know how I feel about Federico Chiesa. We had a question from our friend Daniel Lucci on Instagram. Why do I hate Chiesa so much? I think I have to defend my opinion. I think we had that debate one time, Chiesa or Bernardeschi or Chiesa versus Orsolini, and I always win against Chiesa. So I think since then, because of the podcast, I've always had to defend my opinion of anti-Chiesa. if I wasn't doing the podcast, I don't think I would be so against Chiesa coming to Juventus. But I just think it's not a good career move for him. Is he going to start on Juventus? If he starts, Kulusevski's on the bench. If Kulusevski starts, he's on the bench. We'll see. Obviously
it's a weird
situation. He is a talented player, but I don't think he's clinical enough, and that's what I've said every time. He's not clinical, especially when he gets into the box. Maybe if he plays as a wing back, he'll be able to use his speed a bit more. But he still hasn't played in much in Europe. He hasn't played any Champions League, so it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, no, I think it's a move. Personally, I have mixed feelings about it as well. Again, coming from a neutral standpoint, obviously I've always said Chiesa has the talent, but it's the consistency that lacks in his play at times. He can go on a streak of having a couple good games and then go almost cold turkey the games after that. So. Listen, this is a new environment. This is a bigger stage at Juventus compared to Fiorentina. Again, no knock to Fiorentina. Just you speak of those teams. Right now, Juventus is at a higher level. It's a big piazza. The shirt's a little heavier at Juve, right? So we're gonna have to see how he does. I think he does have the talent. Does he fit into their plans? I don't know. Like you said, like you just mentioned, the other young star that they just recently got in Kulusevski. They have an abundance of now attacking players that are in that mix. Where's Pirlo going to fit everybody? I don't know who's going to sit, who's not going to sit. It's going to be interesting to see. But I just don't. Another thing which I've heard a lot now with the move being official. Does this move elevate Juventus in any way? I don't know.
Not at all.
You know what I mean? So that's one of the things that Juventus. Ever since now that Ronaldo came, it's fine and dandy the Scudetto, but Champions League is another big thing that this club wants, right? So is Chiesa the X factor for that? I don't think so, but we'll see. Maybe for the future, yeah. For the right now, I still think it's a bit of a question mark.
That's a good point you bring up, Adriano. He definitely doesn't elevate Juventus. If anything, Juventus might be able to elevate him in some way. But we'll see. The Mercato finished on Monday. A couple of last minute moves. Chris Smalling to Roma, Nicola Kalinic to Verona. Gerard Deulofeu comes back to Italy, goes to Udinese. Udinese and Watford making a couple of moves. They're owned by the same family. They're pretty much sister clubs, so it makes sense.
Is that right?
Yeah,
I didn't realize that.
They're owned by the same family. A lot of players go back and forth between those two teams. Your boy Bakayoko goes to Napoli.
Yeah.
Unas to Cagliari. Jose Callejon, he goes to Fiorentina to replace Chiesa pretty much. And one of the weird ones, Darmian to Inter. Like I said last week on the show, Conte just wants every fullback. This one makes absolutely no sense for the player, absolutely no sense for the team. I really don't get that one. But you posted something on our social media, Adriano. The Gazzetta, they came out with the ratings for each of the teams with their Mercato. I'll read it. I'll read it to you. Juventus and Napoli 7.5. Inter Milan, AC Milan 7. Roma, Atalanta, Torino 6.5. Fiorentina, Sampdoria, Genoa, Udinese, Cagliari, Benevento 6. Sassuolo and Verona 5.5. Lazio, Crotone, Bologna, Spezia, Parma a 5. Do you agree with those?
I don't know. I saw a point that our friend Joseph had brought up. Talking about maybe not exactly who or what players these teams brought in, but keeping their core players as well. I know he mentioned that about Lazio. Obviously, they locked in Ciro Immobile until 2025. I believe Luis Alberto for about the same time. I'm pretty sure SMS they should be. I think they should be locking him up as well. So they maybe didn't splash a lot in the Mercato. In terms of going out and getting other talent or other players, but keeping the core, which I think for them is very important because, like we spoke about last week with Sean McIntosh. You know, their top 11 is probably one of, you know, on paper you can compare it to any top 11, any starting 11, you know, in the league right now. So that was a good point. He also brought another point up about maybe the relegation team shouldn't really be put into these type a list like this, because let's be honest, what funds do they really have to bring in players? But like we said a couple of weeks ago now, I don't remember when exactly it was, when we spoke about Benevento a bit, the players that they brought in, I mean, they had a low key, you know, good mercato.
Yeah, they did.
You know, bringing in, you know, some Serie A experienced players. Maybe a bit older, but, you know, players that, you know, can do the job for a promotion team like Benevento. So, I mean, I don't know. The Juve and Napoli have the best mercato. I mean, maybe, I don't know. You know, obviously, you know, Juventus brought in, you know, like we just said, Chiesa. You know, they brought in McKennie, who I think it looks pretty good. You know, Kulusevski, which is another bright star. You know, so I don't know. And Napoli, you know, I think Bakayoko is a good fit. I know I've heard some back and forth about him, but I think he's pretty good. I love the Osimhen move. We spoke about that in depth with Ken Ciofreddi a couple weeks ago. But I don't know. I think they can be tweaked. This list could be tweaked maybe a bit, but that's what these lists are for everybody to talk about them. So how do you feel about it?
I wouldn't rate Juventus so high. I really wouldn't. Okay. I would even rate them behind the Milan teams. You know, Fair. They improved their team from last year. There's no doubt, but they didn't sell anybody. It's all loans and they ended players' contracts. So, you know, in terms of making money, they didn't make any money. You know, and they didn't really spend any money either. You know, they did a smart move with the Chiesa. You know, transfer. It's a loan with an obligation to buy / option to buy, depending on what he does. So I wouldn't rate them so high. Sassuolo, I definitely wouldn't rate them so low either. 5.5. I mean, this is one of the teams you thought at the end of the last season they would lose players because of how good they did, especially like a player like Boga or even possibly even Caputo. I didn't think. I don't know. I think that's just one of those players. You know, he's staying at Sassuolo forever. I definitely wouldn't rate them so low. Lazio 5 is really harsh. They did increase their depth a bit. You know, they didn't have a Champions League mercato, and I don't think in terms of depth they're at a Champions League level yet to be playing, you know, twice a week. Yeah. Okay, maybe a 5.5. Verona 5.5 in a way I agree, but at the same time, you know, they were a newly promoted side that really they achieved well last year, and they had good players. And when you have those good players that achieve well, you're going to sell them to make money. So I would put them still on par with the middle of the pack like Fiorentina, Sampdoria, even higher to be honest. You know, Fair. You know, so far I know it's only 3 games, but they don't look too bad. Okay, Kalinic, a nice little addition there. A guy who has, experience with top teams. So, kind of a weird move, that one too, Kalinic to Verona. This guy played at Milan, Roma, Atletico, and now he's going to Verona.
But that's that type of move, right? Like he couldn't. He's a player that he's not gonna perform at a top level club. You know, those types of teams. That's where he'll score when he was playing with Fiorentina. He scored for fun. Exactly. He's gonna go to Verona. I think he'll score. Will he score a crazy amount of goals? I don't know. But another one actually I wanted to say, like talking about players going from one extreme to the other. Godin going from Inter to Cagliari. Listen, you got the good son in Sardinia, but an interesting move. I found he was playing in the Europa League final. Maybe a couple weeks ago, a month ago, or whatever it was, and now he's going to play for Cagliari, which for them it's a big move. You have a very experienced defender coming over. I think that's a big move for them. They've also brought in Unasa, like you said. I mean, they had Sotil. I think also went there. The young Italian winger from Fiorentina. I think went there as well. But yeah, and I agree, and it's cool. It's funny that they have the both Milan teams at on par with each other.
Yeah, and they also have both Genoa teams on par with each other. So
yeah,
I wonder if they did that on purpose.
Yeah, exactly. It made me laugh, but I mean, like it or not, I think Inter. And we've joked about, they want every left back in the league, every old player in the league. But, low key, for what they seem to want to accomplish, they brought in some, pretty good players. So one in particular, I know not the oldest, he's more on the younger side of the spectrum. In Hakimi, I spoke about him last week. That's a good buy. So I think, maybe, like we said, I think these lists can be tweaked. But more or less, I think, they're on par.
So we'll do... yellow card, red card, MVP first. Well, we haven't really talked about any of the games. I'll mention some quickly. I mean, Fiorentina lost to Samp. We'll talk about that with Tito. Sassuolo absolutely destroyed Crotone. They look good. Atalanta, same thing over Cagliari. Typical Atalanta. Roma get their first win over Udinese. Parma get their first win over Verona. Benevento, a nice little upset over Bologna. Your boys Milan, easy win over Spezia. And then Lazio against Inter, another solo in Italia game. Those red cards, just an embarrassment.
Oh, my God. The Vidal Immobile incident.
Yeah, and then Patrick on Sensi. Just that game was just an embarrassment on all levels. Already the Serie A was having a bad weekend, and then that happened. What can you do, though? Yeah. This is the Serie A. Cards and MVPs.
Take it away if you want.
You want to do two cards each, or what?
Yeah, okay. We can do two cards if you want. Just take it away if you like.
So I'll give my yellow card to Kevin Lasagna for missing so many chances against Roma, and he missed a few chances today too against Moldova. He came on as a sub and didn't look so good. He's my least favorite type of lasagna. Let's just put it that way. He's definitely not a national team striker in terms of talent. So he gets my yellow card.
This is definitely going to be another yellow.
And I mean, this is an easy one. I don't know if you wanted to give it to the whole situation with Napoli with COVID and the game postponement and Napoli not showing up, this and that. I'll give it. I don't know if you wanted to give it. We could give it.
Let's do a communal.
Yeah. The Calcio Guys.
Joint Calcio Guys red card this week from both of us, me and Nick, and I think even Johnny as well would probably give it this as well. I think, like we mentioned at the top of the show, just a mess, embarrassment. I don't care, what side you're on. Red card.
Another red card is shown.
Okay, so we'll do. You have a yellow card then?
Yellow card. Well, I mean, you kind of touched upon it a bit before with the whole Lazio and Inter, game. I was going to give my yellow card for that just because, another series of stupidities. I mean, again, merits red card, doesn't merit red card. Like, it's just, it was just such a sensitive, there was no room for it. Like, I mean, if anything, Immobile should have slapped Vidal harder. I thought he was going to give him a bigger schiaff than that, honestly.
Yeah, especially if you're going to get a red,
from Napoli, I'm pretty, we're from southern roots. I'm pretty sure the schiaffs we got at home were harder than that. So I was a little upset for that. But again, jokes aside, I think just that whole shenanigan in that game, from the Vidal Immobile incident to the Patrick Sensi other incident, for me merits it's a yellow card. If there wasn't going to be this Juve Napoli disaster, I probably would have given it to my red, but I'll stick with my yellow for this week.
It's a second yellow, it looks like.
Definitely Immobile should have slapped him harder. Like make it worth it. But then Patrick on Sensi, Sensi sold it like the Mercato on a Sunday afternoon in the middle of the piazza. I think that was honestly worse because how he dived and how Patrick got the red from that. Okay, so MVPs. I'm gonna give my MVP to Lorenzo Montipo, the goalkeeper for Benevento. He was huge in the win over Bologna. Made a lot of key saves.
Bologna made 7 saves. I think it was 6-7 saves. I think he was listed.
Yeah. And good saves too. And already Benevento has 2 wins, and that's his first clean sheet of the season.
And Sansone shoots, and the save from Montipo. Orsolini back inside. The whistle goes. Montipo again, the hero.
Okay, Adri.
So for my MVP, I had a couple of names, in mind. Obviously, the one closer to my heart, Leao, 2 goals against Spezia. It was good to see him, come back from COVID and score those 2 goals. But I think I'm going to give it, my real MVP, I guess, to Pedro for Roma. It was a huge goal for them, getting their first win, of the season. Finally, for Roma after the disaster that they started off the season with. I think Pedro, call it as you will, if he's gonna be that X factor or not. For me, it doesn't really matter. He got in there. He scored a beautiful goal. I don't know if you saw the goal. It was a fantastic goal off the post, a real screamer. It was a beautiful goal, and I think even though he might not be the next best thing for Roma, I think he adds that experience. He adds that depth for this squad, obviously with Zaniolo out. And again, he got Roma their first 3 points of the year. So I think that's what made it even better, for Roma. And it got us some points in the podcast Scudetto predictions pool, hosted by Far From Vesuvius as well. So we'll take that any day of the week when we get a good prediction. But for me this week, Pedro gets my MVP.
That's a poor ball. Pedro could have a goal. He does! It's a wonderful effort. What a goal from Pedro.
Udinese 3 losses this season. They still haven't scored, by the way. And by the way, that game was in the middle of the whole Juve-Napoli situation unfolding. I don't know if you saw. You know that video on Twitter where there's like Elmo dancing and then there's like a fire in the background?
Yeah, I saw that. That made me die of laughter. And sorry to cut you off. I was listening to, and again, great guys. We've had both of them on our podcast, Richard and Frank over at Serie A Sit Down. They did their live podcast on YouTube last night, and they have this whole thing, Who Won Calcio Twitter. I know you got a nod the other week for that. And
with the Suarez.
I think it was with the Suarez thing. But Suarez, this week, they had a joint. I'm pretty sure they had a joint winner this week, and I'm pretty sure that was one of them. I forget who. I mean, forgive me. I don't remember who's the account that posted it. But whoever it is, shout out. I know it was on Serie A Sit Down last night. They shouted you guys out. So it honestly made me die of laughter because they were dancing. Got the first win. Pedro scored, and there's a whole mayhem in the background, fire like. It honestly made me really, really laugh. So, I actually laughed out loud. You usually type it just for jokes, but literally I was laughing out loud. So, shout out to them.
Coming up on the other side of break, Tito from Viola Nation. Welcome back to the Calcio Guys, and joining us now all the way from Seattle is Tito from Viola Nation on Twitter. Tito, how's it going?
Well, here I am, trying to pretend like I'm working and recording this from my place of work. How are y'all doing?
Pretty good. And it shows we're in 2020 when we got to do this and somebody has a mask on. It's just these unfortunate times. But we're glad to see that you are staying safe and protected.
Yeah, me too. I can handle getting caught by my boss doing this Skype call right now. I think if I got caught without a mask, that would be a much bigger problem, I would say.
That's it.
Funny. So what we do with all of our guests, we want to know, why you're the fan of the team you're a fan of. So how come you became a Fiorentina fan? And so you're involved with Viola Nation on Twitter. So how did you also get involved with them?
All right. So I've been a Fiorentina fan for, probably too long at this point, considering their record over the past decade and a half, 2 decades. It's a combination of reasons, like it is for most people who just sort of pick a team. My nonna, her family was actually from Emilia-Romagna and made it to the U.S. when she was a baby. But her favorite city was always Florence. I don't know why, but she just loved Florence. That's where she went when she went back to Italy. That's where we scattered her ashes and everything. So I always felt a real strong attachment because of that. And then also, I was probably 12 or 13 when we got cable for the first time in my house, and they had the old Sky Sports channel on there, and they would do a Serie A show maybe once a week, and I always just happened to be lying on the couch watching it then, because I was, playing for my high school team and all of that. And I remember just watching Fiorentina, and they really stood out, the purple shirts. When I realized where they were from, I was hooked. I never wanted to be a fan of one of the big teams. I mean, if you pick Fiorentina, odds are you're a little bit quirky, you're a little bit out there, a little bit off the beat. And I mean, that's a little bit who I am in some ways, not in all, but in some. And so between those, 3-ish factors, it was pretty much Fiorentina, and here I am now.
No, it's a beautiful story.
I like that.
Yeah, thank you.
I like that.
Continue on.
Yeah.
So share whatever other story you have.
For Viola Nation, it was actually my dad who found the site. When I was probably 14, 15, back when it was the old Offside network. And he told me about it, like, hey, there's this English language Fiorentina site, you should check it out. And I logged on, and because I was 14 years old and hadn't even gone through puberty and had absolutely no self-confidence, I was too scared to jump into the comment section for 2 or 3 years, and then finally started commenting regularly, and was on there for a while, and joined as a writer maybe 6-7 years ago. And then all the people who were the site boss before me moved on to bigger and better things. My direct predecessor was Chloe Beresford, who runs the Calcio Guys podcast and is just insanely knowledgeable about anything, and absolutely handed me my start pretty much. Can't say enough wonderful things about her as a person and as a journalist. She's fantastic. Go find her stuff if you don't know it. But yeah, she moved on to strike out on her own, and I pretty much took over by default, which is the only way anyone would ever trust me with this kind of thing. And 5 years later, here I still am.
God bless. You're doing good things. So we definitely support you over here in Montreal. And honestly, like we just said, a beautiful story. It's that's just why we liked with our guest to ask this question, because you never know what type of answer you're going to get. Obviously, there are the generic answers to why they became a fan of a certain team or what have you. But like you said with Fiorentina, the connection with your nonna, just everything that you mentioned is so unique. Probably one of the more unique answers we've probably gotten on the show. So honestly, beautiful. But I had one question to ask you first. But before I get to that one, sticking with why you became the fan and whatnot. The purple shirt. Obviously, Fiorentina had legendary kits back in the day. Some of these classic kits that Fiorentina had, were honestly beautiful. The players wearing these kits were even more magical. Who was your idol maybe growing up? Your favorite players for Fiorentina maybe back in the day? Who caught your eye wearing the Fiorentina kit?
Oh man. So this is the part where I embarrass myself a little bit. I've got one good answer and one answer that makes absolutely no sense.
Lay it on us.
All right. So the good answer is that I am and always will be the world's foremost Adrian Mutu fetishist. I love Adi so much. He, I think, was genuinely the best striker in Serie A for a couple of years. I mean, the fact that he's also just crazy as a hootie owl. There was never a dull moment with him on or off the field. Was wonderful. He could score with his head, with either foot from close range. He could dribble. He could pass. He had the speed to get in behind. He could hold up play. He could do everything so well. And watching him, I think, was the first player I really, truly fell in love with. For the not as good answer, I'm going to go with Massimo Gobi, who was a journeyman left back who spent several years in Florence. I think he scored maybe 2 goals in like 4 years and was a rotational option with Manuel Pascual and Juan Vargas a little bit, and was just an entirely unremarkable player. But for some reason, I really liked him. I don't know why. I think it might be he did a goal celebration where he got the corner flag in one hand and like strummed it like a guitar, and it was so cool. And I was just right at the age where like that blew me away. And now, forever, I will think that Massimo Gobi is a fantastic player.
And you're
He's not
very interesting.
You're correct. He did score 2 goals for Fiorentina between 2006 and 2010. But obviously, the big talk for La Viola this week is the Federico Chiesa transfer. We got a couple of questions on social media about that. Obviously, Fabrizio, our friend from Genoa Club Toronto, he just asked, what is your honest opinion on Chiesa and his departure?
As a player, he's obviously fantastic. I think that to be as productive as he has been over the past several years, considering the amount of talent he's had around him and the amount of chaos he's had around him, makes it pretty clear that he's a fantastic player. No questions there. I have very complicated feelings about Chiesa, which I think a lot of Fiorentina fans will probably understand right now. I think I'm actually easier on him than a lot of people are. I get that, who's the best striker he ever played with? Half a season of Luis Muriel. After that, Giovanni Simeone? Who was the best, the most creative other player he ever had out there with him? Kevin Morales? I mean, the team has done a terrible job of surrounding him with talent. So I understand how he could look at things and say, here we are, 10th place, relegation battle last year, just unbridled chaos in previous seasons. I want out. I want to do something else with my career. Players don't get to be professionals for very long. They should absolutely have the chance to go and play where they want to play. The fact that Chiesa never came out in public and said, I want to be the next Antonioni, like Bernardeschi did the summer before he left. That Chiesa was always very professional, head down, just let his play do the talking. I found that quite admirable about him. And when it was time to go, he didn't release any statements to the press. He didn't try to hold the club hostage. He just said, I want to go, and he went. And I think that's fine. The way that he's left, though, has left me a little bit cold. Yeah, I think this is where I'm going to say some things that aren't as nice. And again, I do want to point out that he's a 22-year-old kid, who lives with his parents. His experiences, his understanding of having a professional career are going to be very different than mine or probably anyone who's listening to this. And I think we do need to keep that in mind, that he's young and he's looking at his career in a very different way than we are. That said, I think that he showed a real tone deafness, let's say, by not thanking the club whatsoever, issuing a statement, even on social media. I mean, you could pay someone, 20 euros, and they're going to write out a nice post for you, and everyone will like it and go, oh, that's nice, what a good young man. And, we'll all move on. He didn't even bother with that. He said some perhaps brutally honest, but still pretty harsh things about the club. How, getting booed as he walked out the medical center at Coverciano, about, the fans booing him. And he was like, yeah, they would have been relegated without me, so I don't really care, which, yeah, the team probably would have been. I don't disagree with that, but when you've been part of the system since you were, 10 years old, and you've been a local icon for the past 3-4 years, I think in a way that maybe Bernardeschi never was. Bernardeschi, very extroverted, likes to be on social media, all that, and Chiesa famously not so much. He's consistently the worst dressed player on the team. He just doesn't care about how he looks very much, I think. And so I think a lot of people in Florence really admired that about him. Like, here's this guy who just wants to play ball. And they really connected with him over that, hey, we're people who just want to watch the game. Here's a guy who just wants to play it and be left alone. This is what a perfect marriage of interests. And the fact that he didn't even show the respect to say, thanks for all the good times, thanks for the help, I'll always remember Florence. I think that's a pretty low move. And just like the pettiness of unfollowing Fiorentina on Instagram the morning of the day. Wow. Obviously, this is the most 2020 thing imaginable, right? But it's still kind of not real cool, I think. So yeah, I don't begrudge him the move. I don't really even begrudge the way that he forced it through. What does bother me is the way that he has acted since the move has gone through. I think that's pretty objectionable, and I think that fans are probably justified in being pretty grumpy about that. And in fairness, they certainly have been.
Yeah, I think they have the right to be. But no, honestly, I think that's probably the most refined, well-mannered answer to this question that you'll probably ever get. Because like you said, Tito, there's been a lot of fans that probably would have given a lot more shit to Chiesa than you just did. But honestly, great answer. Because we saw the video about when he left after doing the medical at Coverciano and the booing, and it looked like a bit of an ugly sight. But obviously now, like everybody does know, unless you're living under a rock, he has moved to Juventus with a very interesting, complicated type of contract or type of a deal that's put into place. With the obligation / option to buy. So, but we did get, questions, from a good Juventino friend of ours, Daniel Lucci, out there in Toronto as well. Do you think that Chiesa will be an impactful addition to Juventus' squad? We spoke a bit about this before we had you on, Tito, but we'd like to maybe hear your take on that. What do you think maybe Chiesa, obviously you mentioned he's talented and, only is 22 years old, but what can he bring to this already top-notch Juventus squad?
That's the, I don't know how many billion lira question, isn't it? I guess it's a matter of how Pirlo wants to use him and how he's going to use the rest of the team. There is a part of me that's very entertained by Chiesa leaving Fiorentina, playing wing back, being forced to play wing back, and moving to Juve, where he is going to play wing back also. That, I'd be honest if I said I didn't get a little bit of joy from that. But that said, he's, especially this year, really showed improvement on the defensive side of his game. I think in one or two of the games, he led Fiorentina in defensive actions, tackles, interceptions, blocks, clearances. So he puts in a shift. I don't think anyone can accuse him of not working hard. Obviously, people are more interested in his work going forward. He's very, very fast, which is useful for any team. He's got the ability to beat pretty much any player on the dribble with the ball at his feet. I actually think wingback is a better role for him in a lot of ways than playing as a pure winger, because that way when he gets the ball, he's got space to build up a full head of steam. And once he's running at pace at an isolated defender, that's generally going to be game over. I think what's really going to make or break him as a player is going to be how he deals with interacting with other top-notch players. His crossing has always been uneven. His shooting even more so. He shoots a whole lot. I think it'll be fascinating to see if that's a function of a bad Chiesa shot being worth more to Fiorentina than an okay shot for, say, Edmilson Fernandez. But I think it really will be a matter of seeing how he adjusts to playing with some guys who are, with all respect to some of the previous Viola players, at a higher level. If he can cope with sort of, what would you say, subsuming himself to the greater team needs, I think he's probably going to be fine. He's just that naturally talented. If he struggles a little bit with not being the number one guy, I think he's probably going to have a lot more trouble. If I know a lot of people have been comparing him to Bernardeschi. I think they're just incredibly different players in terms of what they do and how they play. I think Chiesa is probably much better suited to what Juve are trying to do right now, although I'm not going to pretend like I have any clue what Pirlo's up to.
Moving away just from the Chiesa transfer, looking at the transfer market as a whole, we got a question from Giancarlo Rinaldi on Twitter. What vote would you give the Viola's transfer window out of 10?
Oh, well, first of all, hi, Giancarlo. Absolute legendary person.
Grande Giancarlo.
We had him on. He was the only other Fiorentina guy we had on in the past.
We're looking for Chloe maybe next. We're looking, so maybe you're gonna have to hook us up with that, Tito.
Yeah, for sure. Y'all should talk to Chloe. She's amazing. Yeah, Giancarlo also. God, what a legend that man is.
Yeah.
Boy. Anyway, sorry. Refocusing here. Is a grade? I'm not very impressed. I think I would give it maybe a 5.5-ish. I'm not very convinced with Daniele Paredes' policy of bringing in veterans on free transfers. I don't think that makes very much sense for the team's current timeline with lots of younger players. I would be much more interested in seeing a bunch of young guys grow together, develop together, take their lumps, and grow as a little bit more of a unit. That said, Jose Callejon probably still has some gas in the tank. Jack Bonaventura still has some gas in the tank. Borja Valero, seeing him come back, even if he has absolutely zero impact, just has this emotional effect for me. And I think for most Fiorentina fans, seeing the mayor back in town, it feels like it's repairing some sins committed by the Della Valle regime that really needed to be repaired. But yeah, I don't think that this team improved as much as they could have. The midfield looks vastly superior. I'm not counting Sofian Amrabat as a summer signing because he was bought last winter. Ditto for Christian Kouame and Patrick Cutrone. I think the issues with the strikers are fairly obvious to anyone who's been watching. We don't need to get into that right now. The midfield certainly looks better, but there's still a lot of questions. I'm concerned about the depth at wing back. I mean, Venuti and Barreca as backups are fine, but not really going to push Biraghi or Lirola very much. Excuse me. And I'm also a little bit worried about the defense. Martin Cáceres was fantastic for Fiorentina last year. Didn't get hurt for the first time in I don't know how many seasons for him, but he's 33, 34 now? And I think hoping that repeats itself is deeply unlikely. I like Martinez Cuarta, but he's also young, just getting into Italy, into his first non-Argentinian team ever. So I think expecting him to adjust immediately is probably a little bit ridiculous. So, yeah, I think it's a fairly incomplete market. Nobody who replaces Chiesa's quality came in short. So I think you lost the guy who, in a lot of ways, made the team go last year. I mean, when Fede played well, the team looked good. When he played poorly, the team looked bad. And I don't think there's any of these new guys are at the level to just take over a game with their sheer athleticism and technique the way that he could. So, yeah, I think there's some nice pieces, but overall the team does not look better to me.
Yeah, well, you gave 5.5. We mentioned before, Gazzetta dello Sport gave them, I believe, a 6. So you're probably right on par. Maybe you had a say on Gazzetta's ratings for their mercato this summer, in quotations. But then again, on just to bounce off your point about not bringing anybody with the same level as Chiesa, I think that also has to do with the fact that Chiesa left pretty much at the end of the mercato. Sure, if you knew that this deal would probably go through, really tried to look for a real replacement. Could have, maybe should have been done. But I think, in future, transfer windows, I think they should be at least looking for that, because, like you said, Callejon, these older guys, Ribéry, Bonaventura, these guys are not getting any younger. Right, they might have some gas left in the tank, but age is going to creep up on them as well. So, but yeah, I think I guess, like you said, fair judgment on the mercato. But another talking point with Fiorentina seems to be on social media, or just if you follow Serie A, follow Fiorentina, is the man on the touchline, Beppe Iachini. First off, so we got another question from our friend Fabrizio at Genoa Club Toronto. He asks, is Iachini the right man for Fiorentina's future? We've heard a lot of different rumors with that. Iachini out, Iachini in. What's your stance on this? And if he's not the man for the future, who would be maybe your guy going forward with Fiorentina?
I have nothing but respect for Beppe Iachini. He came in, took over from Vincenzo Montella, which, that was maybe the worst run team I've ever seen at Fiorentina, and I saw Delio Rossi punch Adam Gajic in the face during a game.
That was a legendary solo in Italia moment.
Oh my God. Yeah, that I still can't believe that happened. Beppe, yeah, I think that he's done a very good job of steadying the ship, of getting the team all on the same page, installing some type of identity, some sort of tactical, coherent plan that everyone understands, that was just glaringly absent under Montella. That said, I don't think he's the long-term solution at all. And I don't think he was ever meant to be. A lot of people, I think at the end of last season, were freaking out that he was signed a new contract, which isn't what happened. The club originally signed him through the end of the year with an option for this current year, and they took the option. And I think that was the right choice. If you can't get the manager you really want in the offseason, why get rid of the guy who's been doing fine for a guy who might crash and burn, or at best won't really be any better? I would fully expect Iachini, unless the team slides back down into the relegation places or pushes all the way into the European places, to be gone at the end of the season with a handshake and a sincere thank you, and to see Fiorentina take a run at maybe Spalletti, maybe a bigger name somewhere else. But yeah, I think that Iachini right now, given the circumstances, especially this summer when you really don't want to be breaking in a new coach in such a short, crazy off season.
Exactly.
Why fix something that is, well, I'm not going to say not broken, because Fiorentina is definitely a little broken, but maybe only a little bit broken, when you run the risk of things being a lot more broken if you make the change.
It's funny you mentioned pushing for Europa League spot, because we actually got a question from Joseph from Calcio Fan Blogs. Well, he worded it: do you see Fiorentina qualifying you see Fiorentina qualifying for next season's Europa League? And I guess that just means, do you see them finishing in the top 6 this season?
I do not, frankly. Next question. No.
Where would you mark them? Going on to this season, like if not top 6, if that's a bit too extreme, where do you think is maybe the reasonable spot for Fiorentina this year?
I had them in 8th before Chiesa left. Okay. Now I think probably somewhere closer to 10th, 11th is reasonable. I think just solidly mid-table. I don't think that this team is going to struggle too much for relegation. But I also don't think that they have the coherence going forward to really threaten, and they've shown some huge issues at the back across these first few games that make me think they are not going to be as good as they were last year when they had the best defensive record in Serie A after Iachini took over.
No, that's fair. So, that's fair. Listen, again, going a bit back to the Mercato, they went for guys a bit older. We got another question, an interesting question, a familiar face in Serie A, Mario Mandzukic. This question comes from Ryan Muglia on, I believe, Twitter. Any possibility of Mandzukic still coming in as a forward to come in during the transfer window? He's a free agent, no? I don't know if you had any thoughts on Mandzukic. We saw the question. Thought we could maybe ask you that. Maybe just any opinion on that.
Sure. I don't think he's going to come. I don't think that Fiorentina are going to carry another striker from the ones they have, and I don't think they're going to get rid of any of Cutrone or Vlahovic. Cutrone is on loan. They reportedly tried to move him on during the window to bring in a bigger name and couldn't make it work with the player and with Wolves, so he's still there. Vlahovic, they thought he was going to go on loan, but it sounds like he wanted to stay, fight for his spot, which good for him, I think, especially after all the abuse he got for what was a very bad performance against Inter, but also he's a 20-year-old kid. Stop saying that he can't play. Stop saying he's a bad person. My goodness, what a bunch of jerks. That's it. Yeah, sorry, back on topic. I think that he's, if he's not going on loan, he's going to play. And Christian Kwame, the club spent a lot of money on him. He's looked very rusty, but also it's been less than a year since he shredded his cruciate ligaments. So, of course, there's going to be some rust. So, yeah, I don't think there's any likelihood that they bring on another striker from what I've heard. Mandzukic would fit the profile. Daniele Prade, the DS, loves older players on a free transfer more than he loves life itself.
Seems that way.
It only seems that way because it's true. But in this case, I don't really see it happening.
Well, they already have so many. Already Ribéry, when they brought him, great PR move, great, experience move, locker room guy who still can deliver on the pitch, because we've seen some sparks of brilliance by Ribéry last season and hopefully into the future of this season. But listen, I guess it's a weird time, I think, with Fiorentina, because they're still, I think they're in the middle of young and old, and they're trying to see where they can go with that. Obviously, under Commisso, I wanted to ask you this because I've been a pretty again, I don't know, advocate. I've liked that they moved on with Commisso. I think the Dele Valle situation before was a bit of a mess, especially at the end. What are your thoughts on the whole Commisso project? Bringing in some of these maybe older guys, still keeping a young core. With the Kwames, the Cutrones, Castrovilli, which we're a big fan of over here. So, what are your thoughts about maybe the Commisso project, Fiorentina?
I think the Rocco Commisso has been pretty much everything you can ask for in an owner. He's spent a lot of money. He's been the public face of the team. But he hasn't really been trying to run he hasn't been going in and telling people, hey, here's who you need to play. Here's who you need to buy. It's my money. I get to make the decisions. He hadn't been Zamparini, right? He's he's doing the right things. He's making the right decisions. He's leaving all the serious stuff to the professionals, which I think is great. I think the question is whether he's putting his faith in the right people. I think that Daniele Prade is very good as a DS in certain aspects and not as good in others, which, I mean, I guess you could say that about anyone, right? But I think his ups and downs are perhaps a little bit more apparent, especially right now when he hasn't brought in any young players, it seems like, during this transfer window, with the exception of Martinez Cuarta. So, yeah, I really think that Rocco's been doing great. I think his focus on getting a team-owned stadium has been exactly what was needed. That's really been his project. He's working on the infrastructure. He's working really hard on making the team financially sustainable. He actually came on our podcast, 6 months ago, and we talked about it, which still feels surreal. Yeah, it was wild. Still is.
Wow. Grande Rocchino. Grande Rocco.
Yeah. No, it was super cool. I mean, just charming guy, too.
So again, we might have to ask you for another plug on that one. We're gonna have to ask you to get Commisso on the pod over here too, Tito.
Oh boy, yeah. Well, I'm not going to make any promises there. No, I think he's done a really good job so far. Like, I think that his, how do I want to describe this? I think that his approach has been correct. I think maybe the results, obviously, less than ideal. And I think that maybe some of the people he's empowered to run things have not been the right people for the job at this exact moment in time. But I would rather see him keep the process intact rather than get that really itchy trigger finger that you associate with Serie A owners and have, 4 different coaches and Davide Ballardini 3 different times in a season running things. Wow. So to me, Commisso has been great. It also doesn't hurt that he's, willing to chat with us and stay in touch with us a little bit over at the site, which is really cool. But even outside of that, I do think that he has been excellent as an owner so far.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I think just like you said, talking about the stadium, I think that's a big thing. Obviously, we just saw today. Fiorentina with their first official app, I believe it was, and the website and everything got really launched. Yeah. So, it's positive signs like that I think gets the Fiorentina brand and name out there, and also can bring some more money in the pockets as well, right? So I think those are the smart moves, for Fiorentina. Going forward. Listen, I think we've had a soft spot a bit for Fiorentina. Ever since maybe the Astori passing, like it was really deep in our hearts over here, and that's why I had to rock for you, Tito, with the Davide Astori kit over here, and it's just one of those things that Fiorentina, you might not be a fan, but they're always maybe in the back burner for some of us that follow other clubs. But again, Tito, we do really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule. We won't tell anybody you're at work doing this. It'll be just between us. But honestly, we do appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule. Where can all our followers, listeners find you on social media?
We're Viola Nation on Twitter and violanation.com if you want to just swing by the site. We're pretty friendly. You will have to put up with a lot of references to medieval history and 20th century playwrights. But aside from that, it's totally harmless, I promise. Adriano, Nick, thank y'all so much for having me on. This has been a blast.
Yeah, thank you. I wish we could talk more Fiorentina. If you're once this is all done, if you ever make a trip to Montreal, we'll have to get together for a coffee and talk Fiorentina, or we could meet up in Florence. That sounds like a good idea.
That sounds good. We did actually have a meetup planned for the regulars on the site. It was supposed to be this past spring, which obviously didn't go through, and we're hoping to get that going again. We would love it if y'all would join us.
Listen, first we gotta get past this COVID, and I think once we do, travel, feeling a bit more safe, I think we can finally, enjoy. We've had so many talks with so many other people we've connected with on social media, Calcio, Twitter, that we love to get some sort of a meetup going, just to interact with people, especially us English-speaking Calcio fans, especially here in North America. So, yeah, it's definitely in the future, maybe on the radar. We'll definitely have to see. And we might have to keep Tito on after the call to continue talking Fiorentina. But again, Tito, thank you so much for taking the time. So everybody do follow Viola Nation on Twitter and check the website as well. For us, you can catch us same place always at the Calcio Guys on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook as well. Catch our podcast on all your favorite podcasting platforms. And we'll be back next week to talk more Calcio on the Calcio Guys.
Thanks for listening.
Ciao.
The Calcio Guys is a weekly podcast by Adreano Donardo, Gianni Delacoli, and myself, Nicholas Di Giovanni. We want to bring Calcio back to its roots in our communities and share stories from around the world about why we're passionate about the beautiful game. You can listen to us anywhere where you listen to your podcasts, including Spreaker, Google Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, iHeart Radio, and Mixcloud. Give us your opinion on social media at The Calcio Guys on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. The outro song is The Last Ones by Jazar.